Good evening and welcome. We are in the Northwest Community College's 1010 class, and our objective for the evening now and meeting number 1 is just to introduce you to the course and maybe talk a little bit about some of the expectations, some of the outcomes, etc. Now, you have a course outline there, and that course outline is going to give you some basic information about the class. Most of this I'm not going to read with you because I think you can read it on your own. Let me, though, talk, and I would recommend maybe they have out a piece of paper, you jot down notes, questions, whatever, as we go through this. Let me explain real quickly that this is the 1010 offering, which focuses predominantly on writing, college writing. Okay, now we will also engage in some conversation and study about reading as well, but this is the required course that you have to take before you can take your other required college offering, the 1020 class. Okay, so the 1010 class has to be taken first. Then you're available for the 1020 offering, which is the required literature course. Okay, and for most of you, if you are engaged in a major of any kind, they're going to tell you that you probably need both of these classes. And again, one precedes the other. And so it makes kind of some sense right away to see this class as what it is. It's kind of a foundation class. Now, in the best of all worlds, this would be the very first class you would ever take as you get ready for college, in the best of all worlds. Because we talk so much about all the other coursework that you'll have to do in all your other classes. You got me? But we live in the real world, right? Where sometimes we have to have other classes that we've taken first or whatever. And if that's the case for you, you may find that some of the things we say, you will say out loud. What other of my students have said out loud, would have been really nice to know that before I took my psych class, or before I took my biology class, or before I took my math class, or whatever, my history class. Okay, because we're going to talk a lot about not only writing in those classes, but reading in those classes and preparing to write in those classes. So that's kind of the overview. We have some basic course outlines, objectives. You can kind of see those there. Some grading stuff as well. You can kind of see that. What I want to turn to now is the very specifics of the meeting plans themselves. That is to say, the next 2 and 3rd page. All right. So that in a course outline is, of course, most important for you. And here in a second, I'm going to recommend that you pick up some supplies, and one of those is going to be a day planner. And you're going to want to take the information off of the course outline and put it into the day planner. Now, if there are pages at all on your course outline, they are associated with your textbook, the St. Martin's Guide, Axelrod Cooper. I'll sometimes refer to it as that simply because those are the two authors, okay? You'll notice that for each session then, we will have certain kinds of expectations. Sometimes you will arrive with stuff completed, okay? And then we'll do work in class as well. So it's kind of a 2-part dance, all right? There's stuff you do from Monday night to Monday night, and you show up and you bring all of your work with you. And then we have stuff that happens in class itself, okay? When we talk a little bit about the handing in of materials then, we'll always talk in terms of a packet. So let's talk real quickly about that, and more particularly about what we will reference as the cover sheet for that packet. I think this will make sense to you when I say it this way. I not only am an instructor for the Northwest Night course, which I've now been doing for 25 years or more, but I also lecture during the day for high school in this room. So, because that's the case, organizing for me matters, right? And so anytime you hand anything in to me, you will always hand it in with some kind of a cover sheet. Think of it as a table of contents. Got me? So whatever it is you're handing in to me, you've got this cover sheet that kind of explains to me what it is that I'm looking at. The first thing that I need on that cover sheet always will be the login information that will appear in the top right corner. There you'll always have your name first and last. You'll always designate this class, which is the 1010 offering. You'll always have a date for what this packet is, okay? And you'll always assign a meeting number for it as well. Notice on your course outline, for example, meeting number 2 happens February 3rd, okay? So if you are creating your cover sheet, you always want to make sure that you always have the date, not the date you put it together, because my guess is you're going to put it together before the 3rd, but actually when it's due, the date that it's due, of February 3rd. And then you have the meeting numbers there, there as well, okay? So that's somewhere at the top. I said at the top right. I mean, you can put it there. Some students like to put the actual meeting number and the date somewhere kind of centered at the top, and then right below that they will begin to list what it is that's in the packet, okay? And listing what's in the packet is simply going to reference what's on your course outline. So whatever it is that you're going to hand in, you just kind of put it in order. And then that's the order that will always appear in the packet itself. Got me? So you'll just type out always, you're always typing your cover sheet. You'll just type out what it is that's in the packet. And then most importantly, you're going to tell me if that work is one of 3 statuses. You're either going to tell me that work is completely finished or done. The word complete is fine. Or you're going to tell me that it's incomplete, which means none of it got done. Or you're going to tell me that it's partial. In other words, some of it was completed, but not all of it. And I recommend that if you have to report either of the last 2, that it didn't get done or it was only partially done, that you would maybe want to explain in detail why. There might be contingencies, for example, that you want to let me know about that would factor into my grading of your packet. And then every week you'll receive a single score for that packet. Suggestion: somewhere in, I don't know, your notebook or your folder or whatever, however you want to organize, I recommend that you have a sheet of paper that just lists all of your scores for this class. The other place you can do it is just to write it actually right there on your course outline, any score that you get. Does that make sense? So you always are kind of in some records about what score. That's important because if there's any kind of negotiation at the end of a semester, I don't understand why I got a C. Well, you didn't hand in 3 packets. Yeah, I did. See, here you scored them. You just failed to write them down. See, that's kind of important. So I would say about any of your packets, don't throw anything away till the end of the semester, and you've got your grades so you know everything is kosher, okay? Let's then, since we're doing this, let's go ahead now and outline our meeting number 2 cover sheet, shall we? So we're actually just going to now talk about our meeting number 2 cover sheet. And literally, you're just going to make this thing up, inside hit or suggestion. I recommend that you just kind of create a master on your hard drive and then just change every week the intel that you need to, instead of having to recreate this every time. Do you get me? It's fine if it looks the same way every time. The information that matters most to me is that meeting number and date, okay? And then, of course, what's actually due. Let's go ahead now and list what your next Monday evening's deadline or packet will look like. First of all, obviously, you're going to have that it's meeting number 2 and February 3rd, so you probably want to write that down. And then I'm just looking at your course outline, so this will help you. If you actually have your course outline in front of you, this will help you to read this thing, okay? I put there that you need to have a textbook by this meeting. That is to say, if you want, you can actually order that book online, and then you have your own copy of it, and then you can do what we call internal notes or annotations in the book. Because these are my books that I'm loaning to you, I can save you some money for the class. But if you're just so inclined, I mean, you can do that where you go online and you can take a look and buy that book used or whatever if it's of importance to you. After that, notice what's listed there. We've got Chapter 1, bullet point notes. Now let's talk about what capital B, capital P means. Bullet point means that you'll read the pages and you'll just take down major important information. Do not feel obligated to rewrite all those pages. They're kind of just introductory, they're kind of boring, and you know, like most textbook introductions are, okay? But if you see headings there, you might want to write down the heading. If there's any definitions that you think maybe are of importance, basically, let's say it this way. you want to have what we would call a footprint. In other words, you need to show me that you at least looked at it. Make sense? So that's what we mean by bullet point, and you'll have chapter 1. If you want real quickly, and we're going to look more closely at our book in a second, you could open up to chapter 1 real quickly just to make sure that you kind of feel groovy about what we're talking about when we say chapter 1. Some of you will go right to a table of contents to find then after that the chapter 1, all right? And you can kind of designate number of pages. This is always an important skill set with reading anyway. How many pages are we talking about? How much information are we talking about? You can kind of see. It's just going to introduce you to the book and the kind of junk that you're responsible for, okay? So we're not talking about very many pages, are we, Mr. Reddinghouse? I mean, it's really not very much at all right? The next thing that you're going to have listed is right there on your, well, it says there that there will be a grammar diagnostic. I'll get to that in a little bit. But the thing after that, the Grammar Handbook Review, Section S. Now, if you pick up this book, and I'll just use Logs for a second to show this to you. If you pick up this book real quickly and you take a look at it, you will see that at the very back end, there are some pages that are pink in nature. Do you see that? I mean, you can see that literally when you just kind of look at it. It's at the very back end. Like, for example, you're going to see that there's page number 851. Did I say that right? 851. And then you turn the page, and then notice that there's this thing called a handbook. Does everybody see that? So after page 851. And then if you'll turn the page, you'll notice that at the bottom of these pages, they're not numbered. Do you see this? They're not numbered. It's like 851 was actually the last page of this book. This is like a little grammar handbook, and that's what we mean, okay? Now, when you look on the first, do you see at the bottom of that third page it says H, which stands for handbook, -3? Do you see that? Okay, well, H-2 they didn't put on the page, but they should have, right? So H-2 is where we're looking now. Do you see this chart right here? That's like a little table of contents of the grammar handbook. Do you see it? And do you see that the very first one says capital S? Are you looking at with me the chart? Capital S, and what's it say? Sentence what? Sentence boundaries, is that what it says? Sentence boundaries, right? Okay. Do you see that? And then do you see it says S1, S2, S3, right? Everybody agree with that? Okay. So what you're doing for the grammar handbook is you're just taking some bullet point notes, okay? We ask that you look at some fundamental grammar instruction, mostly as a review, as we get ready to start talking about editing of papers and the like. So next week it'll just simply be Grammar Section S. If you look at Meeting 3 for February 10th, you'll see Grammar Section G. That should be the next section there. Do you see it? And if you want real quickly, you can kind of flip through to see how many pages are we talking about for Section S. See, and you always want to do this in a college class to make sure that you know how much work are we talking about as we get ready to do some of this reading, okay? How much work is actually listed for us there? I don't think there's a whole lot there, okay? It's not a lot. All right? Finally, back to your cover sheet. We're going to do a little what we call writing diagnostic. This simply means that I want you to type me a little 5-paragraph essay, okay, on this topic. You might write this down, and this topic will always be then listed right there on your cover sheet as well. This is just 5 paragraphs on the following topic. 3 things I hope to accomplish this semester. 3 things I hope to accomplish this semester. All right? And you might think about dealing with at least these 3 topics. I'll just leave it up to you. But I think there's 3 easy topics that help you to outline this little essay. 1, you might think about improving as a reader. We're going to do a lot of reading in here this semester. Okay. Try to become a better reader. 2, you obviously might think about the ways you want to improve as a writer. That makes sense since this is a 10-10 class. 3, you might want to think about the issues of organization and trying to make sure that you meet all of your deadlines on time. if you're really looking to get a top grade in the class, and I would hope that you are, then it matters that you're A, here every Monday night, and B, that you come prepared with all your packets done, right? So that way you're ready to hand them in on the evening that they're due. All right? Questions, comments? Okay, I said 5 type paragraphs, by the way. As long as you get me 3 that cover those 3 paragraphs, at least of topics, I'll be fine, okay? I am not working off of the assumption that all of us know what a formal essay looks like yet, okay? We will, obviously, by May, right? The idea of this class is that by the time the semester ends, you are ready to write in any class at any university or college, and you can be successful at that. That's this whole project, okay? And trust me, you will. I promise you will. This class is constructed in such a way that as long as you try and as long as you keep working, you will get it. Okay, you will, I promise. Now, one of the reasons why I can say that is that right away, for example, we're going to start working with those 3 things I just listed of improving reading, writing, and organization. Let's make a quick list of supplies for ourselves. So this is the supplies that I always recommend that you have with you when you come to class, okay? The first thing I always recommend, and by the way, you're going to see that my organizational comments would be as well applicable to other classes you might be in. The first thing I always recommend that you bring with you is a 3-ring notebook with some college-lined paper, okay? Now, I think we all know maybe what 3-ring notebooks mean, and then, of course, that paper that can go inside of it, right? It's not that I'm anti-spiral notebook. It's that it's more difficult to organize with a spiral notebook. It's easier to take pages in and out, so I recommend that, okay? And if you want to pick up some dividers to help you in terms of dividing the different kinds of papers or whatever, that's fine. The next thing I recommend that you get is some kind of flash drive for yourself so that you have a way to save the papers that you're typing. You're going to type quite a bit in this class, and I recommend that you have a way to save. What happens if you save everything to your H drive or to your hard drive and then everything goes crash? Does that ever happen, do you think, in 1010 classes? See, all right? So saving something to a flash drive allows you to be able to, to do that, okay? And if you have some issues with printing, we have a mobile lab here in the room which can allow for you, if you have your documents saved on a flash drive, to be able to upload them and then maybe print or something like that. See, so we can kind of help you with that, all right? I recommend that you have 3 different colors of ink for reasons that we will explain in more detail later. I recommend that you have at least 2 different colors of ink, a red ink pen and a blue or a black ink pen, okay? And then finally, I recommend that you have a number 2 pencil. We've got to do some testing periodically. It's a good idea to always have a number 2 pencil with you if we've got to do some kind of Scantron-driven thing, all right? By the way, is my Scantron machine coming back from Mr. Talkovich, or what was the rules on that?
Probably still down there.
Okay, so talk to him tomorrow morning and get it back here. That way I've got it.
All right, thanks.
Finally, I recommend that you have some kind of a day planner or date book or something that allows for you to write down into your master schedule, I'm going to use the term, so that you kind of have a sense of what's due and when. Especially if you have more than just this class. How many of you are taking more than just this class this semester? In other words, this is just not your only class, see? So obviously it's a big deal that you want to write down all the deadlines from all of your different course outlines so that you know what kinds of stuff is due. No big shock here for college or university courses. All the work seems to fall in patterns around certain weeks. So no big shock. Around week 4, week 5, on university campuses into a semester, all of a sudden the first major projects happen. Week 7, week 8, and of course week 9 is midterms. Makes sense, right? And if you have it written in your date book, then you can kind of start to see, whoa, I have a lot of reading that I have to do next week. I might as well get started this week with some of that stuff, okay? I would recommend, and you might put a note to yourself to do this, that by next week, when we join again, meeting 2, you've written down all of the deadlines from the course outline into the date book that you have. And I really don't care which date book, what date book you use. Make sure it's got enough room so that you know you can write all of your information down, all right? From this point on then, I will reference that date book and the information that you write in that date book as your master schedule. The ability to accommodate to multiple deadlines. Most college students, if you give them one job to do, they're pretty darn good at doing it. The problem is, though, if you give them 4 jobs to do over a period of 3 weeks. First get A done, then B done, then C done, then E, then F. Ready, go. Well, a lot of times college students do that P word, right? And they do procrastinate. And all of a sudden, when the projects all start coming in, well, A gets done, and B kind of starts, and C, okay, and then D, well, I never got around to it. See how that works? And that is, of course, one of the serious challenges of university, college, freshmen, and sophomores, learning how to balance those kinds of deadlines. Believe it or not, college success, and I'll have a lot more to say about this next week in my lecture next week on the academic community, college success has almost nothing to do with intelligence. I mean, we got so many studies that prove this. It has nothing to do with how bright you are as to whether you finish college or not. In fact, some of the people that drop out are unbelievably bright. I mean, super bright. In fact, it almost seems to work the opposite. The smarter you are, often the harder it is to stay and pass. Why? Well, part of it is because they never learned how to organize. They could just, the night before, memorize a few things, go and take the test, which is fine at the high school level. Not so fine at the college or the university level. It's just too much to do. It's too much work, right? And so you kind of fall behind, and then you start doping or whatever, and then the next thing you know, you're ready to drop out, and it all sucks anyway, and I'll just go get a job doing something, flipping burgers or whatever. So, all right, let's talk now about our textbook, all right? For many, many years, as part of this class, I used a textbook, and I always recommend it to you. And if you want, you take a look at it. Mortimer Adler is the author, Adler, and it's called How to Read a Book. And it's an amazing book. It's a funny book, a book called How to Read a Book. But he made the argument that good readers know how to read a book with some kind of strategy. And one of his strategies was, don't ever jump into the first chapter until you've looked at the table of contents. If you go right now and look at the table of contents, you will see that this book is divided up into 2 parts. So let's look at the table of contents real quickly, all right? And you will see that we have a series in part 1. We have a series of chapters starting with chapter 2. Chapter 1 is just an introduction, right? So go ahead and look at Roman numerals. Let's start not with the brief table of contents, but the elongated one of 35. Did I say that right? So XXXV, 35. Do you see it? So you've got that introduction, and that's what you're reading this next week, okay? All right, the introduction. And then notice that starting with chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Do you see this? A different chapter, are you ready for this? For a different kind of essay. Every chapter teaches you how to write a certain kind of essay. Do you got me? Up through, I believe it's chapter 10. Did I say that right? And then do you see, after the chapter 10 page, that on the next page, it says part 2. Do you see that? And the second part of the book, strategies for reading and writing and the like. Now, over the course of our semester, we'll read the entire book. We're only going to, however, read really closely those first 10 chapters. Make sense? And are you ready for this? Every week, starting with meeting number 4, right? You can see it right there, right? Meeting number 3. Every week, we will have a paper that we'll hand in that will be the kind of paper that's being introduced for that chapter. Make sense? So you can see it already in February the 10th. Meeting number 3, well, what do you know? There's chapter 2, right? And you got to write the paper for chapter 2. Look at the next one. You'll have a workshop session that I'll talk about, but then February 24th, There's chapter 3. See how that works? Right? Then chapter 4. Everybody groovy with what we're saying? See how that works? Okay? And so on, and so on, and so on. Got me? So that's kind of how the course lays out. We use the textbook as kind of our guide. Now let's talk about chapters 2 through 10. Okay? Chapters 2 through 10 are the different chapters of the essays that we have to write. Go ahead and open in your book to chapter 2 real quickly, just so that you have a sense. So you've left the table of contents now and you've gone to what page? What page opens chapter 2? Where are you there, Miss Wright? What is that? Page is 16, 17? Yeah, 16, 17. So let's go ahead and look at that now. Now, watch this. Every chapter is designed to look the same. Chapters 2 through 10. Identical almost. They follow a very single, similar formula. Right? It's beautiful for us. It's beautiful because it allows for you to know what's coming. So there's no confusion. It's very easy. Walk you through it. Notice that first there's always going to be the large number that shows you the chapter number. Then they're going to tell you what the essay topic is. So right there you can see it. Chapter 2 is Remembering an Event. We'll call this a reflective essay. You're going to write about some experience from your past. They're going to make sure you understand what that kind of essay is on that page and the page to follow. They go ahead and flip the page and the one to follow. Then, after 2 or 3 pages of an introduction, they then will have a series of models. Does that make sense? They're going to show you what the kind of essay that you need to write actually looks like. Make sense? They'll even kind of help you to point out with colors and stuff like that the things that you want to be sure you have in your essay when you write the chapter 2 essay. Make sense? So you'll have several of these models that then will have some explanation. Do you see that? They have a little explanation. Okay? And then you're going to flip through and just keep going through chapter 2 and see some models, And then all of a sudden you're going to hit a place on page 38 where it's obviously the end of the introductory materials. Then you want to flip the page, look at 4041. Now again, every chapter is laid out the same way. After some introduction and models, they finally are going to get to the actual assignment itself. And look at page 42 real quickly. We're going to have a schemata, a little diagram, in every one of these chapters 2 through 10. And they're going to look exactly like that. It's going to seem unbelievably redundant, and it is unbelievably redundant. What they're really trying to do is to make sure that you get it, okay? The actual assignment for chapter 2 appears on page 43. Do you see it at the top where it says the writing assignment? Right? Okay. And what we'll always do in class, for example, we'll do this next week as we get ready for meeting number 3 where you have to write this paper. And I'll go through those 2 pages right there to make sure that you understand what the assignment is. Okay? Then, they literally, are you ready for this? Walk you through the writing of the paper, step by step. These pages are always in blue. And there are steps that will allow you to be able, if you're lost, to know exactly what you need to do. First, second, third, fourth, and start flipping through those and you'll see all kinds of suggestions for editing, revision. Sometimes they'll even give you an example of a student model. Do you see it? And finally, what page do we end chapter 2 on? Finally, we come to the very end. Oh, notice, see, the instructional stuff ends on 61, but then go to 61, a writer at work. They show you a college student who actually is writing this paper from scratch. And then go ahead and flip 61, 62. They actually give you an example of the paper. Notice the first draft on 65, 66. So they're helping you to see what one of these papers finally looks like. 67, 68, go ahead and flip to it. 69, thinking critically about what you've learned. And finally on page 71, chapter 2 ends. Do you see it? Unbelievable overkill here, okay? And then guess what? Look at the next page. There it is, chapter 3. And guess what? Looks identical all over again. It's beautiful for us, so it's beautiful. Here's what. If you know what you're doing and you feel very comfortable writing the assigned essay, you just write the essay. No worries. If on the other hand you feel a little bit lost and you'd like to ask somebody like, dude, what exactly do I do to write this essay? This textbook will literally take you through step by step. Okay? Now, when you write your notes over these chapters, there's going to be two kinds of notes that you'll be taking. And, I'll say this again, but, it's kind of self-evident. The first is the bullet point information about how to write the essay. Okay? So anything that they're saying that can help you to understand how to write the essay, you want to write that stuff down. You do not, underline do not, you do not rewrite the entire chapter, okay? Because a lot of it's redundant. They're going to say the same thing 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Dude, if you've got it and you understand it, there's no point in writing it over and over again, okay? On the other hand, if you're confused, keep reading and keep bullet pointing until you get it, all right? I've never had a student using this book who could not figure it out on his or her own by virtue of the instruction. Why? It's very simple instruction, but they do it over and over and over. And finally, most students go, I get it, I understand. The second kind of note-taking that you're going to have is the models themselves. Now, these models you are going to look at very closely. Here's why. You want to anticipate that when you show up to class in the evenings, that I can actually ask you questions over those models, okay? So you want to take good notes well enough to know what the models are about, okay? And obviously, because they're models, you want to ask yourself the simple question, why does this model kind of serve as a good model for this type essay, okay? Now, how does this work in terms of the use of the textbook? Well, we arrive every Monday evening with a packet. Right? Tuesday follows Monday. So normally what I've recommended to students to do is to always on Tuesday look at the next chapter, get a sense of what the assignment's going to be, and make a little plan for yourself. Got me? Now you got to take into consideration all of the other work that might be assigned. A grammar section that you've got to do, or some other chapters that you have to read. For example, notice that on February the 10th, not only do we have chapter 2, but we've got a little bit of that review stuff on chapter 12, okay, that you got a bullet point. So you always want to sit down on Tuesday and get a game plan. How much time, how much energy and time am I going to have to give to this project for the next meeting? Right? Got me? And sometimes notice, like for example, the distance between February 10th and meeting 3 and February 24th and meeting 5, so you can see there's some time there, right? So you can kind of plan accordingly because we only got a workshop on meeting 4 on February 17th, and I'll kind of explain later what that's all about, all right? So there's just nothing due on that session, which means you can kind of plan. Do you see what I'm saying? So it allows for you to kind of sit down on Tuesdays and you make a plan. My suggestion is always that by Thursdays, your first draft of any paper that's going to be due the following Monday is done. So at least you have something written, and you can begin to go through the process on Friday and Saturday, trying to do some editing. Finally, on Sunday, you want to finish with your project so that on Monday, you're putting everything together. If you really want to use this course well, don't be writing these papers on the day that they're due. Of course, I know college students fall into habits where they sometimes end up having to do that, but don't make that your norm, because you'll throw together a paper that will ultimately be a packet of a B instead of an A, right? And then you won't get your A that you would like, all right? So planning early, good idea, all right? And so that's how we use our textbook, okay? And you can kind of scan then through your course outline and see that by the very end of our semester, I know it sounds odd that I would be talking about May right now, but it will be here really fast. And by the end of our semester, you will be working in Chapter 10, which, by the way, if you want to look at your table of contents, you'll see that the Chapter 10 has to do with writing papers for your 10-20 class. That's the lit course, interpreting stories, okay? And so If you want, you can always leave this class and then go into a 1020 offering, and you'll be ready to do the writing of those kinds of papers as well. All right. Okay, so let's talk real quickly about contact information. Look at the course outline, page 1. And do you see on the very front where the information for contact is? You will see up there at the top my email address at timmymcgee@yahoo.com. That's my email address. You might want to put a star next to that or whatever. If you need to email me questions, comments, or whatever, that's where you would do it. Make a note to yourself that this evening, all of you need to do that and just send me an email that says, "This is me, did you get this?" And then I'll just email back, "Yep, got it." That will allow for you to know that you and I have access to each other to converse, okay? There are different kinds of emails. You, for example, as a Northwest Community College student, have your own email. And for example, I sent all of you an email to that web address, to that email address, but some of you have not yet activated that. You don't have your password or whatever. Don't worry about it. I know most of you, if not all of you, have your own email accounts through Yahoo or Hotmail or whatever. That's fine. Just email me that and then just work with my Yahoo account, okay? And that will be how I will then look for your stuff. It's for me the easiest to access wherever I am. Allows for me to be able to send you emails or whatever, okay? Let's talk about absences from class, and let's talk about late assignments real quickly, because this is always an important part of our class. I am aware that you're very busy people and you live very, very busy lives, and I'm also aware that sometimes things come up that are beyond your control. Here's the deal. As much as possible, you want to be here on these Monday evenings. If something does come up, you need to email me and let me know. That way I can make my plans for my lectures accordingly. If you know you're going to be gone for any number of reasons, on the road or whatever, you should be talking with me about it before the day that we're going to meet. That way you and I can have some conversation. If I give any instruction, and I almost always will, I'll record and then post to LearnStrong. That way you can be sure that you can at least watch the information that you missed, and so you're not falling behind. In terms of deadlines, let's talk through this one. On Mondays when you arrive, I expect you to bring your packet with you. If for some reason you have to hand your packets in late, Wednesday is the deadline. Okay? Now you're going to lose points if you don't hand it in on Monday night, but I'll at least let you give it to me sometime on Tuesday or Wednesday. After Wednesday, it will just score a 0. So you want to plan accordingly, all right? Now, I won't run you down if you miss or call you or email you if you miss a packet. I'll just assume that after the Wednesday, that's a packet that you're going to go ahead and not hand in to me. If you hand in a packet late, you want to write me a note at the bottom explaining to me, use red ink, explaining to me why it's late. Okay? This thing was ready to go on Monday, blah, 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 blah happened. I'm handing it in now Tuesday morning or whatever, okay? For sure, if you're absent on Monday, then work very hard to get me by Tuesday morning your packet, okay? How do you do that? Just come to the high school, go to the front office, give them your material, make sure that your packets are always stapled. That's why we use the cover sheet. My name should be on your packet cover sheet. I don't know if I mentioned that. Maybe we should go back and you say that. Make sure it says McGee on your cover sheet, all right, in your login information or whatever. So they'll just put it in my mailbox, okay? So you just go to the front office there, say this is for Mr. McGee. You can just place it in his mailbox and then I'll have it, okay? And that's why you staple everything for me, okay? Any questions, comments then about logistics? And that's kind of all we've covered. All right, well, the last thing that we'll do then is let's go now and look at our meeting schedule for next time, all right? When you arrive next Monday night at 6:30 for meeting number 2, you're going to have your packet with you that will have that chapter 1, that will have that grammar section S, that will have that 5 paragraphs, at least 3 to 5 paragraphs of what I hope to accomplish this semester. All of that will be stapled as a little packet, and you'll be ready to hand that in. We'll do two things next Monday night, okay? I'm going to give a lecture that's just kind of an introduction to really, why are you here? I'm going to try and answer that question. I'm going to say some things you already know. I may say some things that you don't know, okay? And what I'll try to do is to frame our conversation and our time together in some kind of larger context. I mean, I'm aware that the primary reason you're here is to get 3 hours of credit so that you can take the 1020 class and be done with English. And short of wanting to grow up to teach this garbage, which I can't imagine anybody would want to stick that pencil in their eye, it seems to me that once you're done with 2 English classes, you're done, right? I get it. I understand that's what you want your credit. But I'm going to make the argument that maybe this experience can be something a little bit even more than just getting your credits. That maybe it can kind of help you get ready for and be successful in a larger community that I'm going to call the academic community. It's a term I'll define in detail next time. Then after we're finished with that, we're going to do some diagnostic work. And all that means is we're going to figure out kind of baselines, where you are right now, what you know. All right? None of these tests are for scores. You're supposed to miss every one on a diagnostic. I mean, dude, if you could get top score, you wouldn't need this class. Think about that. If you could get everything right, there's no point in you being here. You go do the next class, right? So, in other words, the test that I will give to you, by definition, you're supposed to miss most of the stuff. Now, some of it you'll get because, you kind of know it or whatever. But if you don't get some of the answers, you're not supposed to feel dumb or anything because, hello, that's why you're here. We're going to teach it all to you, okay? So we'll do that diagnostic, all right? And that will be our session then for next time, all right? And then looking ahead, February 10th is already our first major deadline, and you can already get started on that. And I would, if it was me, I would quickly get through the work of next Monday night here, the next couple of days, and then I'd get started on the project of Chapter 2. I'd start to look at the assignment and see, what is the assignment? What's the best way to get started? Okay? So, there you go. Questions that are logistic in nature about any of the stuff. I mean, I know I just threw a whole lot of stuff at you here for a few minutes. So, any questions that you have for me? Concerns? Observations? Okay. Nobody hit the